Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where I share creepy and scary stories that will give you chills. If you love horror and spooky tales, make sure to subscribe and join me every week for a new story. Let's get into the dark side together. The wind had been strange lately. It wasn't the cold. Michael had lived through far worse winters. It wasn't even the silence of a small town that wrapped around the house like a thick, wet blanket. No, it was something deeper, something beneath the silence, a pulse, a breath that didn't belong. He leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping from a chipped mug. Outside, dust was falling slow and thick, like syrup running down a dying sky. His son, Ben, sat cross-legged in the living room, flipping through a picture book, lips moving silently. The only sound in the house was the occasional pop of the old radiator and the ticking of a mismatched clock on the wall. Michael glanced at the corner of the room. There was again that thing, not a noise, not a shape, a wrongness. He shook it off. He'd been tired, grieving, seeing things, but it had started with the dog. 2 weeks ago, a neighbor's golden retriever had stopped barking and then stopped moving. The Thompson said she just sat in the backyard for hours, staring at the house. Then one day, she walked into the woods, never came back. Ben had watched her from their window, silent. 3 days later, the shadows changed. Michael noticed first in the hallway. The coat rack cast a shadow like someone standing there, watching. He thought it was a trick of the light, but then it moved, just slightly, and when he turned around, no one was there. The next day, Ben asked him something strange. "Dad, why do you walk down the hallway at night?" "I don't," he said. Ben looked at him, frowning. "But I saw you. You were standing in my doorway last night." Michael's mouth went dry. He hadn't left his room. That night, he stayed awake. At exactly 2:14 a.m., he heard the creak. Hallway floorboards. Just outside his door. He stood, careful not to wake Ben, and stepped out into the hallway. Empty. But the shadows had changed again. They didn't move. They twitched. The town had started whispering. But no one spoke aloud. A man at the gas station mentioned people getting slow, forgetting their names, standing still for hours. Some claimed the fog was making people sick. But Michael knew better. It wasn't the fog. It was the way the shadows clung to people. Like they didn't want to let go. Like they were feeding. That evening, Ben refused to go into his room. Said it felt too crowded. When Michael asked why, the boy answered with 3 words that made his skin crawl. "The shadows talk." Michael checked the room. Nothing. But as he turned off the light and pulled the door closed, he saw his own shadow remain inside the room, standing at the window. The next morning, Michael found Ben sleeping on the couch, curled beneath a blanket like a cocoon. The boy's eyes were rimmed with red, his breathing shallow and quiet. Michael didn't ask why he hadn't gone back to his room. He already knew the answer. Instead, he fixed breakfast in silence, the eggs sizzling in the pan louder than seemed possible. Every sound in the house felt exaggerated, like the walls were listening, like the silence had memory. As he poured orange juice, something moved outside the kitchen window. He froze. A man stood in the yard, not moving, not waving, just staring. His back was turned, arms limp at his sides, as if he'd come out forgotten why, and simply stopped. Michael squinted. It was Mr. Allen, the man from 2 houses down. Michael opened the door. "Hey, you okay?" Mr. Allen didn't respond, didn't even turn his head. But slowly, ever so slowly, his shadow twisted around to look at him. Michael's breath caught. It wasn't the man that turned, only the shadow did. And then both disappeared. He slammed the door shut. His hands trembled on the knob. The air felt heavy, like something thick had filled his lungs. He turned around and saw Ben staring at him from the couch. "You saw it, didn't you?" the boy asked. Michael hesitated. "Yeah." Ben didn't say anything more, but his shoulders sank, like he had been hoping, praying, that his dad wouldn't confirm it. Later that day, Michael drove to town. He needed answers. But Red Pines was no longer a town. It was a shell. Shops stood open, but no one shopped. Cars were parked but coated in ash and dust. A child's toy sat in the street, abandoned. The air was cold, but not wintry, more like a sterile chill, like a hospital left running long after the patients had gone. At the diner, he saw a waitress standing by the counter, not moving, not blinking. He stepped inside. The bell above the door didn't ring. The woman turned her head, not like a human. The motion was too smooth, too deliberate, and her eyes were all wrong. Black, not empty, but full of movement. He backed away, left the door swinging behind him. Back home, Ben was in the basement. Michael called out. No answer. He found the boys standing by the washer, flashlight in hand, staring at the far wall. There was writing there, scratched into the paint. Dozens of little lines. Ben whispered, "They come through the dark." Michael stepped closer. There were handprints on the wall. Small, too small, and not human. That night, Michael dreamed. He was standing in a field of glass, reflections of himself stretching endlessly in every direction. But in each reflection, his shadow was missing. Then one of the reflections turned to face him and smiled. It wasn't him, and it whispered, "He's not yours anymore." Michael jolted awake. Ben was standing beside the bed. "I don't feel like me," he said. Michael didn't sleep the next night, or the one after that. The town wasn't dying. It was changing. And the shadows? The shadows were learning how to be people. They stayed the night in the church crypt, huddled between old pew cushions and candlelight. Ruth took the first watch, whispering to the shadows like they were listening, or maybe warning them. Michael lay awake, his back to the cold wall, arms around Ben. But the boy was shaking, not from the cold, from something deeper. "Dad," Ben whispered, "well, they already changed me." Michael held him tighter. "They didn't." Silence. "Are you sure?" He wasn't. Just before dawn, Ruth woke him. She didn't speak, just pointed to the far wall. Something had written across it in ash. "The hollow ones remember everything." Michael stepped forward. Ben read the words out loud. His voice didn't sound like his. Not entirely. That morning, Ruth showed them a locked cabinet in the back room. Inside was a box, made of dark metal, humming faintly. "They leave traces," Ruth said. "Marks, like fingerprints of whatever they really are. I've been collecting them." Michael opened the box. Inside were objects that twisted his stomach. A Polaroid of someone with no face. A toy car that dripped something black and alive. A VHS tape labeled Home, 1997. And a mirror that didn't reflect Ruth's face. Michael slammed the lid shut. "They're not aliens," he whispered. "They're editors." Ruth nodded grimly. "They're writing over reality, bit by bit." Ben didn't speak for hours after that, just watched his own reflection in a spoon. As the day wore on, Ruth grew uneasy. She claimed they should leave soon. The church was no longer safe. "The walls remember," she muttered. "They always do." Michael asked where they would go. She handed him a note. It was torn from a journal. Scrawled on it was a single phrase: "Go where the shadows are weakest." That night, Michael dreamed again. He was standing in front of his house, but not the one they lived in now. One he didn't recognize, but felt like home. He walked inside. Ben was at the table. His wife who had died a year ago, turned to him. She smiled, said nothing, and when she opened her mouth, black smoke poured out. Michael woke up gasping. Ruth was gone. So was the metal box. So was the key to the back room. Only Ben remained, staring at the wall again, at the writing that hadn't been there before. "One of you isn't written right." Michael slowly turned to Ben. The boy didn't look up, but his shadow smiled. Michael didn't speak as they left the church. He didn't even lock the door. What was the point? Behind him, the structure groaned as if grateful to be abandoned, like it had held its breath for too long and now finally exhaled. Ben walked beside him in silence, his small boots crunching softly in the dust. They didn't talk about Ruth. They didn't talk about the shadow that had smiled. Michael didn't ask Ben if he'd seen it too, because he wasn't sure if the answer would be his or something else's. They reached the outskirts of town. Houses bent inward here, as if bowing towards something beneath the ground. The air tasted metallic, thick with static like a television on mute. Trees leaned away from the road. A single sign remained on the path forward, painted in crude letters. Do not follow your own shadow. Michael read it 3 times. Ben didn't look at the sign. He didn't look at his shadow either. Michael did. It was walking half a step behind him. By midday, they found the greenhouse, once a science building, now overgrown and rotting. Its glass panels had cracked and reformed at impossible angles, like a shattered mirror rearranged by something that didn't understand symmetry. Inside, Michael found the first one. A woman, sitting, mouth open, but no eyes, no ears, just echoes. As he stepped near, her mouth moved, no sound, but her shadow whispered on the wall. I was rewritten. Michael staggered back. Ben didn't move. His hand pressed against a glass wall, and it rippled like water. Michael stared. Ben, don't. Too late. Ben stepped through. The inside of the ripple was a hallway, identical to their own hallway at home, only longer, and at the far end his wife stood, smiling, alive, calling out, "Dinner's ready." Michael fell to his knees. His hands trembled. Tears welled. It felt real. Smelled real. Roast chicken. Mashed potatoes. Ben looked back at him. "Dad." Michael couldn't breathe. Then her voice changed. Slower. Deeper. "Dinner's ready." Again. "Dinner is ready." Again. "DNNN. The voice collapsed into static. The hallway faded. The greenhouse reformed. His wife was gone. And so was Ben. Only the shadow remained, crouched, watching. Then a whisper from behind. "Which version of him do you want to remember?" Michael turned. A mirror hung from the ceiling. Not glass, but shadow, liquid and alive. In it, he saw himself, dozens of times, with dozens of different suns. Some had no faces. Some weren't human at all. One looked just like Ben, but its eyes blinked sideways. Michael ran. He didn't know where. He didn't know if the ground was even real anymore. Only that somewhere his real son might still exist. If not in this world, then maybe in the one before the rewrite.